Listen, we talking about practice. Not a game, not a game.
If you're looking for the best basketball talk in the universe, you just found it. This is Deep Hoops, where fans are the host. Tim Brayboy, Troy Ramel Royal, and me, your point guard, Jehudi. We're talking basketball, all basketball, and nothing but basketball. So sit back and enjoy the best basketball talk in the podcast universe. This is Deep Hoops.
Rob, let me ask you a question. When we started this at the beginning of the season, we knew we would get to this point. But it seemed like it went super fast. Did it seem like the season is going by quickly for you?
I can't believe we're recording our final episode of the
regular season.
Of the regular season.
Come on, man.
It just seemed like yesterday.
And he doesn't understand because he was in China.
Right.
But, since he's been back, let me do this first. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Deep Hoops. I am the minister.
And I'm Rob, the straw. And I'm Tim.
And this is the final episode for the regular season. And we just can't believe that the season is done. And this is the last episode for the final season. For this season. When we come back next week, we'll be talking about the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I will say they talk about March Madness. This is April happiness for me, okay? Because this is the time of the year that I live for. When we have the playoffs, the Masters are behind us, March Madness is behind us, and we are in basketball Mecca. We're in the playoffs for the NBA. So let's jump right in. We're calling this episode the recap of the season. And there's been a lot of interesting things that happened in the season, and we're going to talk about the awards that are coming up for the season. But what one or two things stood out most for the two of you in this NBA season? Rob, I'm going to start with you because you was here the whole time and he was in China. What stood out to you this season?
Well, it's still a season of haves and have-nots. All right, you still have a few teams that barely have 25 wins or have 25 wins or less. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that stood out for me is that I have League Pass. I get to see a lot of teams, a lot of games. I think from a game standpoint, regardless of the teams, I think this year the games have been the most competitive. You have non-playoff teams with huge victories, big wins against playoff teams. The fact that a top-seeded team or a better team was playing one of the lower-seeded teams or a weaker team, they still had to bring the A game.
Right.
And I haven't seen a season like this where these bottom feeders were just not bottom feeders. They weren't having it. They was playing some good ball. So for me, what stood out this season most is just the bunch of quality games and the effort that was given from all the teams in the league this year.
What stood out to you, Tim?
I think the biggest thing for me is the 76ers. To go from 10 wins, I want you to think about this, 10 wins 2 years ago to 28 last year, 28 to 30 last year, to 50 or 51 this year. That's a tremendous leap. You didn't have a Magic or a Bird or a Jordan or anyone like that just coming in to, take over the league. But you got new stars, which the league is in great hands because you got an Embiid, you got Ben Simmons, you got Markelle Fultz, even though he didn't really play this year. They are really there. And Brett Brown. It was poor Brett Brown, this Drake that he was coaching, because they were tanking the process. And they stuck with him. Most owners and most GMs, they blew out the GM Hinkie. They blew him out and brought in Colangelo. But they stuck with the coach. I guess they saw something in the coach that he could really coach. But I think to me, that's the biggest thing. The teams Philly is coming alive, and they have a real chance. They have a better than a puncher's chance of coming out of the East. So that's the biggest thing for me.
the two biggest things for me this season, and you're going to be surprised by the first big thing that I'm going to mention because I never have many great things to say about this individual, though I think he's a great basketball player and a great human being. But LeBron James. Going into last night, because they didn't play today, he's played in every game. And they have, 3 games left? Two games left.
He's played in all 80.
He's played in all 80. And I've gotten on him for resting, for taking sabbaticals during the season. I'm amazed at the age that he's at. Not that he's old because he started young, but 15 years in the league, he's playing at the level that he's playing for 82 games. That's remarkable, especially for a man that always talked about getting his rest. So he came in with the right mindset this season, saying that I'm in condition, I'm in shape, and I'm going to see my way through all the games. If my body can allow it, it will allow it, and it has. The other thing that stood out to me, and we talked about it in different various ways, is the parity in the league. But the parity coming from ownership and management really building a team seriously. And that's why you don't have any, total bottom feeders. Everyone is trying to compete. Everyone is trying to make their team better. And some know how to do it better than others. Some had a bigger head start. But I'm seeing where the teams are really taking management, analytics, and everything else seriously so that they can build a winning franchise. It's no longer, we have sharing of the funds, and so I can lose and still make money. No, every team is trying to compete. Those are the things that stood out to me.
That's a great point because the big thing is everyone's tanking. Well, you got 8 teams that are literally tanking, but those 8 teams, they're all over 20 wins. Mm-hmm. So you don't have a 13-69. You don't have a 10 game winner, 11 game winner, a 12 game winner. You got they're tanking. They're putting out bad teams, but the bad team is still has a chance once a week, once every 2 weeks
to beat someone. Who was it today that blew out someone else in one of the games today?
Well, you had Atlanta beat Boston.
Atlanta beat Boston.
Right.
But there was another game where there was somewhat of a blowout, and I'm like, what's going on? Yeah. Everybody is really trying to compete.
But I just want to kind of add to something what you said about LeBron. LeBron was the biggest lobbyist, I should say, about the back-to-backs. Mm-hmm. And the commissioner, he lessened the back-to-back by extending
the season,
the calendar season. And because of that, I think it put pressure on LeBron not to sit out games.
Right.
And to play. But I will say this. I said a couple of weeks ago, I thought by extending the calendar, you added extra days that could make you vulnerable to injuries. But in doing so, you may have added practices. And by adding practices, guess what you get? Quality performances. Mm-hmm. And, you mentioned 2 years ago, Tim, that Philly won 10 games. We're talking about the teams that are tanking, they all got over 20 wins. They may even have 25 wins. So what happens is that by having an extended calendar season, you have maybe 2 to 3 additional practices per month, maybe even more. You're probably adding at least 1 additional practice a week. So what's happening is now you're getting a little bit more polished product. Mm-hmm. And if the management staff has done their job with blending the team together and now you have adequate time to practice, then yes, you're going to have some upsets during the season. Yes, you're going to have some overtime games with a team that you can no longer go to the strip club the night before.
Right.
Hey, we're playing so-and-so, and this is going to be, no. And like I said, I benefit from League Pass, and I've watched some quality games of teams that you might say, that ain't going to be a game. And next thing you know, you watching it. You making more popcorn. 24/4.
Right. And I think it's only going to become more competitive. So who are your bottom feeders? Phoenix
Phoenix, Atlanta,
Memphis. Some self-inflicted, some just bad management. I think Phoenix probably of that list that I just named. New York is the worst management. So I mean,
but you know what? I wouldn't consider New York a bottom feeder because had Porzingis not got hurt, I don't think they would have been in tank mode as early.
Maybe not, but I'm talking about bad management.
But
there.
from a bad
Right.
management, yes, they're in there. But from a bottom feeder team, I think your bottom feeding team were Memphis,
Atlanta.
Phoenix, Atlanta. I mean, early on, Orlando was looking like a playoff team.
Yeah, in the first few weeks.
Right, and then they just fell off. But Sacramento, but even Sacramento had some quality wins.
And they have some quality players that they picked up in the draft, and they try to balance it. At least they made an effort. They failed.
Right.
But they had a strategy.
They had a strategy.
They said we were going to mix veterans with young players. And somewhere along the line, it fell by the wayside. But they had a strategy. Now they have to reconfigure their strategy and come back with something. But it's a team like Phoenix that I don't even know what their strategy was.
They just kind of putting it as just players, but they don't really have any strategy.
Well, I mean, when they had Isaiah Thomas, they had Bledsoe and Brandon. Wasn't it Brandon?
Yeah,
Brandon Knight. What was your strategy there?
They had Dragic.
And Dragic, what was your strategy?
And that's going back to last year. But let's talk about just this year. They entered the season, and 5 days in, they fired Earl Watson.
Right. I mean
did you think he was taking you to the finals?
Right.
I just don't know where they're going. Then they trade Eric Bledsoe. They get Greg Monroe, and they release him. Okay, I understand that. But it's just where they're going and what's the... Are they really hoping that they can get a Tim Duncan out the draft, or Kobe Bryant out the draft?
But here's the thing. Even if you get one of those players, you're going to end up losing them when they become free agents because you have bad management. They've got to fix their infrastructure. They've got to fix their back office so that they're showing the rest of the league, because the weather there, from injury standpoint, they have a great
great
training facility, and I think it has also to do with the weather. That I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the magic wonderland there, but you have less injuries. So they have something there that players would want to be there if you had a good infrastructure from a team standpoint. They're not building a good team. So it starts in the front office, and I did one of my closing comments on that very subject on the Phoenix.
And what's bad is that they may have easily top 5 best young player in the league in Devin Booker.
Yeah, right.
I mean, and
if you don't start doing something, you're not going to have him.
Well, they're going to have him for at least the first 7-8 years of his career, because when he becomes a free agent, he's going to be a restricted free agent, and they'll match any offer out there. So if he gets a 4-year deal somewhere, they're going to match it. So they'll have him up to 8 years. But the thing is this: if they don't add on to him quickly, just as we can't believe we're doing the final episode of Deep Hoops for the regular season, his 4 years will go by just as
that
fast.
quickly. That's right.
Go by just as fast.
As we recap the season, we talked about the things that stood out most to us. Let's go through some of the awards. I mean, we're going to be dealing with the big one, MVP. Is there a consensus here on Deep Hoops who's going to win the MVP? Tim, who's your MVP?
It's going to be James Harden, number 1. Closing fast, but I don't think he's going to be able to catch him, LeBron James. And third for me would be the Brow, Anthony Davis. Those would be my top 3.
Rob?
A couple of weeks ago, I said to you guys right here on the set, I said that if New Orleans was to finish 4th or higher, Anthony Davis would win MVP. Well, I got news for you guys. I think the person who is deserving of the MVP and will win the MVP is going to be LeBron James. And I'm going to tell you why. Last year...
You think LeBron James is going to win the MVP.
So,
this is the start. This is the
straw. He's stirring the drink. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Because I want to hear this.
Clearly, LeBron's team that he played with last year was a better team than what he's played with this year. They won 51 games last year, 51 and 31. With 2 games against the Knicks and the Knicks in tank mode. As we speak right now, Cleveland's 49 and 31. They have a chance to match last year's total. Now, mind you, Cleveland has had 2 different teams this season. Neither one of these teams have matched up to the personnel that they had last year. Kevin Love has been injured on several occasions, and he's their second best player, regardless whether it was before the trade deadline or after the trade deadline. But the one constant has been LeBron. And LeBron has had an MVP year. Yeah, I know what James Harden has done is phenomenal, and they've got 65 wins. But when I look at MVP, which is the most valuable player to their team, you take LeBron off of Cleveland, they're not in the playoffs. You take Harden off of Houston, they have a chance to make the playoffs. If not, they're in the playoffs as an eighth seed. At this point here, LeBron James deserves MVP.
So you're saying that James Harden is going to be second again?
Erica Kane.
Susan Lucci. You're saying that he's going to be the Susan Lucci, he's not going to win an MVP?
I can't speak for the voters, but if I had a vote today, I'm voting for LeBron James.
My MVP goes to James Harden, close second LeBron, third doesn't matter. I mean, you know, there was a time that we were talking about the Brown, Anthony Davis, but I don't see anyone. It's a 2-man race, but it's really, in my opinion, all season long, James Harden has the MVP. I hear your point. Wouldn't be surprised if it happened. It would be a Susan Lucci moment for James Harden, and
I'm actually rooting for that.
I would have a good chuckle. I've got to root for it too. I'd have a good chuckle.
Now let me ask you guys something. If, let's just say, Friday night, Cavs come back from 30 down, and LeBron hits the free throw, he misses the free throw, or he misses that free throw, and
just somehow they won.
Yeah, somehow that some way they win. And he has they gets to overtime, and he has a 50-something point triple-double. They end up winning the 3 seed. Now you may have a legit case that he's the MVP.
It doesn't matter 50 points and a triple-double, but if they win that game Friday night, it puts them in a position to win 52 games, which would be better than last year with a weaker team. And here's the other thing. I think the Eastern Conference is better this year than it was last year. So, I'm not the biggest LeBron fan. I respect his game. I respect that he's a great player, and I love him more off the court. But I also have to give credit where credit is due. What he has done for this year, and he's willing this team together, and
hasn't sat out one game.
I mean, he slipped on the defensive end, but at the end of the day, how much on the defensive end has he slipped?
Not slipped
when
enough
they
to be
haven't
Harden.
Slipped.
They're bad on defense.
And the record.
They're
Think
bad
about
on
that for a second. They're going to match last year's record with a
tougher
worse
East.
team and a tough East. And a tougher East and no defense. So if they had a bit of defense, they have a much better record than last.
The only thing, I think that the one thing that voters may hold against LeBron is it may be a little bit of LeBron fatigue. He's 1-4. They may say, okay, we're not gonna let Harden be the Susan Lucci of MVPs, because this will be the 3rd one. I think LeBron's defense is bad because he's the leader on defense. As good as his offense has been, is as bad as his defense has been. And it's several. He's kind of like Harden, just letting people shoot by him and not doing anything, just kind of standing there. He's not quite Harden, but he's done a lot of Harden things where he's not playing good defense.
Well,
so
quiet as kept. I never thought he was a good on-the-ball defender anyway.
No, he's a free safety.
Overrated.
He's the free safety. That was his thing. He was always the free safety.
Yeah, I mean, can he help out on a trap on a guard? Sure. He's 6'8", 6'9". The guard is 6'1". Somebody else is there, and he's over there. Yeah, sure. It's gonna look good. Can he chase down a block? Yeah, but did he ever pull up his pants, his shorts, and lace up his and guard the Kevin Durant's and the Paul Georges and the
Shut him
Carmelo
down.
Anthony for the whole game?
No.
But meanwhile, they put up 30 on him, or 30 in the game, and guarded him the whole game.
Right.
His thing was more the way he played the free safety. He was the free safety.
Free safety. He was
Yeah.
Troy Polamalu.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on, though. Is there any argument on the Rookie of the Year? Rob, who's your Rookie of the Year?
Going into this week, I had Donovan Mitchell. I got a good look at Ben Simmons Friday night, and I'm gonna have to give the award to Ben Simmons. I would love to give it to Donovan Mitchell. What Donovan Mitchell is doing is special in Utah. Tim alluded to it early on in the production meeting about how he's gonna be the first rookie to lead his team in scoring. But yet Ben Simmons, he's special. He's so special, and I hope the Philly brass is watching this. He is so special that I would say no to LeBron James coming to Philly. You don't need him. This guy, he has resemblance of LeBron James. Let this guy grow. Ben Simmons, Rookie of the Year.
I don't disagree with that. I think the stat was that he was the first rookie to lead his team in scoring since.
And that's made the playoffs.
That's made the playoffs. Since Carmelo? Since Carmelo,
right.
okay.
Yeah.
Who do you have as your Rookie of the Year?
Ben Simmons.
Ben Simmons.
Ben Simmons. Now, Mitchell has been tremendous.
Yeah.
Tremendous. I think he's a leader on the offense as Gobert is a leader on their defense. But I think Simmons has added a different quality, and think about it. Last year, Embiid only played, 31 games? Think about it. If Embiid would have played 50 games, you'd have had Simmons there the whole year last year. Philly probably would have made the playoffs last year. Mm-hmm. So, because they won 28 games, so I think the eighth seed won 41. So if you had Embiid there for another 30 games and Simmons the whole season, they probably would have made the playoffs last year. But the way he plays the triple doubles with no jumper. He has no jumper at all. He's not effective outside of 12 feet. So, but he controls the game. He has a Magic Johnson kind of way of controlling the game. And Magic didn't have a jumper when he came in the league. So I think the thing for him is working on that jumper, at least getting out. If he can be a threat from the 3-point and not take as long as Magic, the 3-point game wasn't
where it is
nearly as
today,
relevant.
right.
But Magic ended up having that little set shot jumper later in his career. But if he gets that jumper down where it's consistent, maybe a little bit better than LeBron, quicker than LeBron got his, watch out.
Yeah. We're going to move on because I think we have no disrespect to Mitchell, but I think it's unanimous here on Deep Hoops that Ben Simmons is going to win the Rookie of the Year. Here's where we may have a difference of opinion. Who's the Coach of the Year? Now, let me start. I gave you guys the first shot, and I know that you guys are going to outvote me on this. But I've got to go with a team that no one expected to make it to the playoffs, period. On the East or the West. You can name all the coaches on the West that you can say are Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year candidates. You can name the teams that are the coaches on the East that are Coach of the Year candidates. This one person was coaching a team where he was going into the season on the hot seat. He was going into the season, no one was predicting the team to make it to the playoffs. Nate McMillan of the Indiana Pacers is my Coach of the Year.
Okay.
Tim?
I'd say that's a good choice. I wouldn't begrudge if he won it. But I say Brett Brown for the reasons I've said earlier. 10 wins 2 years ago. 10. To go from 10 wins 2 years ago to 50 or 51 this year, over 50 this year, and a home court first round in the playoffs. They've clinched at least. I think they can't finish no lower than fourth. So, and they're in third right now as we speak right now. They're the third seed. So you go from winning 10 2 years ago to over 50 this year, and you got young players. I mean, Simmons, rookie. Embiid, 31 games in his career. This is his fourth year, only played 31 games. I mean, the guys at Covington, McDonald. You got guys. Reddick is a vet. He's a vet to kind of hold things together. But a lot of young players. This guy can coach.
No, I'm not saying that. I think everybody that we're going to mention can coach. Rob, who do you have?
And I respect you guys' choices, but I'm going to have to go with Brad Stevens. I think when the season started, they had Morris, who they acquired in the Avery Bradley trade in order to make room for their big free agent acquisition, Gordon Hayward. He starts the season on the injured list. 3 minutes into the season, Hayward is out. Throughout the season, there's been several injuries. There's been times they suited up and they had a starting five in street clothes. But the one constant is Brad Stevens and his ability to get the most out of his players. I mean, Terry Rozier could easily be most improved player. I mean, this is a guy that's probably 7th, 8th man off the bench and has been starting now, and his game is just elevating and getting better and better and better. So I wouldn't be surprised if Marcus Smart is traded in the offseason just because of Rozier's play. Now, no Kyrie. Horford was out a couple of times. I have to give it to Brad Stevens. They're going to hold on to the 2 seed. I expect them to still make it to the second round of the playoffs. I think what Brad Stevens has done with this team, I don't think no coach could have him in second place right now.
You know what? Here's the thing. Every coach that we've named, and we've left some names off,
Sure.
are arguably Coach of the Year. This is going to be the hardest Coach of the Year selection that I can remember in the last several years.
You could easily add Quinn Snyder. You can add
Dwayne Casey. Popovich.
Doc Rivers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna ease up on Doc Rivers because he didn't make the playoffs.
Well, coming up until last night, he was in playoff contention with a team that you give anybody else. You talk about all the injuries in the West. Come on, man, don't sleep on Doc.
Yeah, I think Doc's gonna walk away from LA.
Well, you didn't like him as a fit in LA from the door, but but the bottom line is, even if he does, that has nothing to do with him being
performance this year.
This may have been his best coaching year in his whole career.
And as much as I would like to see Doc Rivers coach the Knicks, I hope the Knicks don't go after Doc Rivers. And I'll tell you why. If he walks away from them, it will cost them a draft pick. And that's the one thing that the Knicks cannot afford.
To give up.
Is to give up a draft pick.
But if they release him, let him go.
If they fired him,
right,
that's a different story.
Would you take him?
He would be definitely strongly considered. Strongly considered.
Let's move on. I think I'm sorry.
I was going to say my first choice is Mark Jackson.
Mark Jackson, and I knew that. Let's run through the next 3 very quickly, all right?
Sure.
And I'm just going to name them all together, and you give me who your picks are. In this order: Defensive Player of the Year, Sixth Man of the Year, and Most Improved Player of the Year.
Defensive Player of the Year, Gobert. Sixth Man of the Year, Sixth Man of the Year, Lou Williams. And what was the
Most Improved Player?
Oladipo.
Oladipo, Rob?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Gobert as Defensive Player of the Year. As far as Sixth Man, only because he's gonna make the playoff. I'm gonna go with Eric Gordon. He's averaging 18 points a game. And for my Most Improved Player, as much as I want to say Terry Rozier, I'm gonna have to go with Oladipo. And by the way, Oladipo might be the only player to get Most Improved Player votes and MVP votes.
Yeah. But if he has a chance of winning anything, it's a Most Improved Player.
Yeah.
And I will go with Gobert. I will go with, riding with Tim all the way. I will go with Gobert. I would go with Lou Williams, and with everybody with Victor Oladipo. And we'll be right back. So as we've recapped the year, we've talked about who we think will win the different awards for the season. I want to ask a question as we're going into the playoffs, and next week we'll start our playoff edition of Deep Hoops. The team most likely to be upset, face an upset in the first round of the playoffs, Is there a team that you're like, you know what? This matchup against that matchup, this 3 seed, this 1 seed, this 2 seed could be out. Who's that team?
Shocker, Golden State against OKC. That's a big one. If it falls right, and as we speak at, was it 9:30 tonight, the 2-7 matchup is Golden State against OKC without Curry being back for the playoffs, for the first round. If I'm Golden State, that's not a matchup that I like, because I think you're going to get Carmelo. This is what they got Carmelo for. Now, it's a show and tell, and Billy Donovan's going to have to put him in positions. I think last night I watched when they played Houston, he put him in positions to where he didn't get picked on as much on the defensive end. And Carmelo came out. He came out smoking. Now, me and Rod talked about offline that Westbrook didn't go to him as much, but Carmelo missed 7 shots in a row. So it's a combination of both, chicken and the egg kind of thing. But if I'm Golden State, that's the matchup I don't want to see, because Adams, Golden State can't go to their death lineup when you got Adams pounding them on the boards. That's going to be an interesting matchup. I think in the East, I think whoever plays Boston can get eliminated in the first round because of so many injuries, and you can slow down and you can really focus in on Boston coaching, what their strengths and what their weaknesses are in the playoffs. So I think in the West, Golden State, if they play OKC. OKC, and in the East, I think it's Boston against whomever they play.
We said the one team. You gave us 2, so I'm going to give you 2, and then I'm going to kick it to you, Rob. As I look at it the way it stands right now, if the playoffs were to start today, you have Houston at 1, Minnesota at 8, Golden State at 2, OKC at 7. Both of those could be upsets. Either one of them could be an upset. Minnesota, with Butler back, they could upset Houston. And here's the funny thing. With Houston have their 2 top players being known for not being great during the playoffs, there's going to be pressure on them that a number 1 seed would normally not have against an 8 seed. And then with Tom Thibodeau coaching, defense, Butler back, that's a recipe for disaster that Houston really doesn't want to face. And then without Curry being on Golden State, Durant now has to carry that team. And he has shown during this season when Curry is out, he's not doing a good job of carrying that team. And now he gave up a 3-1 lead before he came to Golden State. And so that pressure is really going to mount on his shoulders. You're the man. I can see both of those being upsets. But who do you see, Rob?
Well, I'm going to just tell you who's getting upset. If the season ends the way it lies right now, and Curry is not in uniform in the first round, Golden State is going home. And it's not so much what OKC needs to do or will do. It's because the guy that I labeled as the best player in the NBA before the season started is not living up to his bill. Golden State is a much better team with Curry without Durant than it is with Durant without Curry. And Durant is a much better player than that, where the absence of Curry should not drop off as significant as it shows. I mean, this guy has had 4 of his top 5 scoring outputs this year was in the absence of Curry, and they lost those games.
Right.
And in fact, they lost all the games of his 5 highest scoring totals. So Durant this is about Durant coming into this first round, because personally, if it's Minnesota, they can lose. Mm-hmm. If Curry is not in uniform, Golden State stands a chance of going home. And unless Durant steps up and show us to be the best player in the league, or the number 2 player in the league, or possibly the best player in the league, this is on Durant. He's going to have to step up and play.
Now, you wanted to add a caveat to the question.
Yeah, so let's reverse the question. Which team that we all figure doesn't have a chance to make it to the second round. But of those teams that we don't figure to have a chance to make it to the second round, who's got the best chance of making it to the second round?
Whoever plays Boston.
Whoever plays Boston. I think, I'm going to give you one. I'm going to give you one out in left field. Okay, right now, as it stands tonight, the 1-8 matchup in the East is Toronto against Washington. I think Washington has a real chance of winning this series. They have a very good, not a better than a puncher's chance of winning this series. And I'll tell you why. The backcourt of Wall and Beal, and when they're right, is better than DeRozan and Lowry. Let me repeat that. The backcourt of Wall and Beal, when they're right, is better than DeRozan and Lowry. And that's where the series will be won and lost. Whoever wins the backcourt will win that series. So if Wall and Beal are right, and they win, and they're better than DeRozan and Lowry, they win the series.
Okay. I personally think that San Antonio can beat any team that they face in the first round. I think that Pop is strong enough to win 2 games himself, and the players will win 2. And as it stands, I think that they're either going to face Portland or Utah in the first round. And I think they can beat either one of them.
Yeah. I mean, this, to me, is going to be the most interesting playoffs because one could conceivably beat 8 in both conferences.
1.
I mean, 8 could be 1 in both conferences. 7 could beat 2
in both conferences.
6 could beat 3. Well, maybe not 6-3 in the East.
I don't think Miami can beat Philly.
Right, Philly, not in the East. But everywhere else, it will be an upset. But is it really an upset?
I think this is the year that, like I was telling Raw offline, I don't think you have any short series. I think that you won't have any sweeps. I'll be shocked if you had any sweeps. I think you may have maybe
Unless it's Philly.
a 4-1. You may have a 4-1.
I think Philly can sweep Miami.
I don't think they will because Miami got veterans, and Philly, that first game, I could see Philly coming out and laying an egg in game 1 because of the pressure. You know, you come out, the crowd's jacked up. This will be their first playoffs in 6 years since the strike season. That was the last time Philly was in the playoffs. So I think they can be, the crowd will be jacked up, and Miami can kind of hold steady Eddie and, kind of steal a game, maybe game 1. So I could see that. I could see Philly going, before they get their sea legs. Philly it may be a 4-2 series or what have you with whoever they play. But I don't think you have any sweeps.
As we recap the season, we're looking forward to the playoffs. But every week, I look forward to the closing comments. So, Ra, it's on you. What are your closing comments?
Well, I'm going to continue with the theme, recapping the season.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was one disappointment for me throughout the season, and this is something that the commissioner, he's going to have to address. I'm going to open up my closing comment with a question, and then I'm just going to simply go from there. Have you ever witnessed a season in the NBA that at the All-Star break, there was a player-referee meeting? It's just unheard of. I mean, here's the thing. Referees are human. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to miss calls. They're not going to see everything. The fact that these guys are older men and women, that they get up and down the court just as the players get up and down the court. And in some cases, a player doesn't even have to be all the way down the court to be effective in the play. Because he can throw the outlet pass. But yet that referee needs to get up there. The players are playing with 4 additional players. The refs are playing with 2 additional players. The fact that the ref have been under scrutiny this whole season, it's just been distasteful. And I'm not saying that they did not create it or is not warranted or they deserve it. But the fact that they have to be put in this position, I watched the games. The F-bombs that are going on by players today is ridiculous. If I'm bringing a family of young ones to the game, I'd rather be up further than at courtside so they wouldn't have to be subjected to those F-bombs that we hear that they go on during a game. I mean, yeah, I would be upset if I paid $600 for a family of 4 to go to a game and you threw out my favorite player. Whether that's a Durant, a LeBron, or this or that, any of the named players. But at the end of the day, treat the referees with some kind of respect. I mean, I applaud the referees for throwing these guys out. I really do. I applaud them because they're not saying that you're exempt from it. If you step out of line, you're going to get what you deserve. You reap what you sow. I mean, when we was kids growing up, a referee was like your grandfather's brother, the grand uncle. You just don't get out of line with that person. You know, a referee was somebody that had authority. Your coach was as good as your dad. You know, you just didn't get out of line. And I believe that the players here are out of line. And I think that the commissioner is going to have to sit down with these players or the players union or somebody and get these players in check. And this doesn't take the refs off the hook. But at the end of the day, the commissioner is going to have to bridge that gap so that we can have maybe a flow of game, a more flow to the game, and don't have to be subjected to the F-bombs and the tirades of these players and allow the referee to do his or her job during the game.
You know what? As you were saying that, I was thinking, what if your teammate, every time you missed a shot, that's a mistake, started yelling at you?
Right.
That's showing them up.
Right.
They made a mistake. I mean, they're going to make mistakes.
Can't catch it all.
They're not going to make every shot, and the ref is going to miss a call. It all balances out at the end. I don't think any ref is out for any player. No. So let them do their job to the best of their ability and complain afterwards.
Yes.
You know, or let the captain or the coach do the complaining. Stop all that noise. Shut up. But on that subject, King Complainer is my closing comments. You know, and I've said this before, and I don't like picking on any individual, but when they deserve to be picked on, I'm going to do the picking. Kevin Durant was my favorite player. When Kobe was retiring, I was ready to move the mantle from Kobe to Kevin Durant. I had Kevin Durant posters ready to go up on my walls, down in my boom boom room. I had everything ready for Durant. OKC was going to start going out to Oklahoma to go see some games. And then he left. And I didn't like him as much anymore because I felt that he ran from a team he ran to a front runner. And now his attitude has just changed. I was listening to him on a podcast, with the Bill Simmons podcast, and he was talking about bloggers. And he was referring to them blog boys and being disrespectful to people that you never played the game. Well, let me ask you a doggone question. He likes hip hop. What if I said to him, you've never rapped? How do you have an opinion on a rapper? Well, I can't have an opinion. I have to play the game at the NBA level to have an opinion? When we start saying Nas is the best or this one is the best, we're saying that based on our opinion. He has an opinion about movies. He has an opinion about food. He has an opinion about rappers. Are we to say because you're not a chef, you can't have an opinion about food? I'm sick of Durant. I mean, I am literally sick of Durant. I think he's trying to reinvent his image or trying to act like he's hard, but he is a sensitive little And I think that he should, as Laura Ingraham said, not shut up and play when it comes to speaking your mind on politics, but just shut up and play. Let your play do the talking for you on the court. And stop with all of this running of your mouth with refs, blog boys, and anyone else. Play the game that you have been gifted to play. And stop condemning people that have an opinion of you that's different than the opinion that you have of yourself. First of all, what other people think of you should be none of your business anyway. But if people are going to have something to say, don't come after them. Show them on the court. And that's my closing comments. Basketball boy. And for Deep Hoops, I'm the minister.
And I'm Rob.
And of course, Tim Brayboy. We tell you every week, we're not experts, but we're passionate fans talking about the game we love. We'll see you next week as we prepare for the playoffs. Peace.
Peace.